I guess ever since the first non-native people came here, it's been about our lands and resources. That's what they've been after all along. And they want to keep it. And they'll do anything possible to keep it. They'll set up different policies, they make laws, and a lot of times it's designed for them to keep control over our lands and resources. And they try to keep us in a state of poverty. They try to keep us relying on their money, relying on their transfer payments, so that when we don't comply, we don't do what they want us to do, then they can pull the plug and basically starve us out. So that's what they've been up to ever since they got here, and they're going to continue to operate in that manner for as long as they can get away with it. It's very difficult for us because they have their laws, they have their army, they have their police. We have to deal with provincial police. We have to deal with the provincial governments, and they can be brutal, as we've just seen in New Brunswick when people try to defend their interests. So that's what we're up against here, and it's for keeps. For them, it's all about the economy of the white people. Big business, to have access to the resources, because that's what drives the governments. That's how they get elected, is by providing a good economy. So those are some of the things that we have to consider, and that's what we've been dealing with. And we have been trying to prepare for the last 15 years our case, our evidence that this land is our land. It's not the federal government's land, it's the provincial government's land, it's Algonquin land. That's what we have been preparing for. If we negotiate with them, the more evidence that we have, the better our negotiating position is. And we have always been advised by our advisors to prepare as if we are going to court, because that's where we might end up someday, is in court. So we have been advised to have the strongest evidence available, because that's all that the courts will listen to is evidence. They don't care about hearsay or anything. They want to see evidence, and that's what they'll base their decisions on. So that's what we have been working on over the last 15 years or so. I've been chief for about 26 years now, and the background of our community, I guess, is that based on the historical research that we have been doing over the past 15 or so years, is that we are a successor band from the old Jumon band that occupied basically the Jumon River watershed in the 1800s. From there, our people were forced to relocate to a place called Grassy Lake. And then from there, in the 1900s, we moved to Wolf Lake. And then the last place that we lived as a group, as a community, was a place called Hunters Point. And since about 1969, our people have moved out of Hunters Point due to pressures from governments and logging companies, and also for people to seek employment. We moved mostly to the towns of Kipwa, Temiskaming, surrounding areas. And all of those moves were the result of mostly logging companies encroaching on our territory, and I guess that resulted in a scarce game for the people to live off of, because the loggers also hunted moose, and they killed beavers, and they They created dams that flooded our territory and made it difficult for our people to move. So they kept moving away from, the non-native people is basically why all of these different moves. And also diseases came into our territory. When the non-native people came in, they also brought diseases with them. And so that's why our community had moved around a lot, and especially in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. But today, most of our people live around the towns of Kipwa, Timiskaming, North Bay, and elsewhere across the country as other communities. And but I guess most of the people today are centered around here, where we have a few offices. We have this band office, and we have a forestry office and a consultation office in Kipwa. And we also own, some different tourist businesses. One at Lanyell, one at a place that they call the Swisha, and one down here between the borders of Quebec and Ontario. So most of our people, though, are centered around here, and a lot of the people work, at Tembec and elsewhere in the around the area and elsewhere across the country. But so that's basically, in a nutshell, of where we came from. But the original band was the ancient, or the old Jumon River Band. So that was where we first started off. That was our home base at one time. There's a policy in place right now. It's called the Federal Comprehensive Land Claims Policy. It's a trap. And it's a trap that some of our friends have fell into. For example, in BC, there's 50 communities that have been trying to negotiate a settlement with the provincial and federal governments for the last 15 years, or 20 years, or maybe even more. In some cases, 30 years in Quebec. They owe the governments now millions and millions of dollars. In BC, they owe them almost $500 million. So what happens is that once you owe anybody money, even on a personal level, if you owe somebody money, you try to negotiate with them, you're at a disadvantage when you're negotiating because you owe that person money. It's that simple. So what happens is that once you owe them money, the more that you owe, the more the pressure is on you to settle, and to settle for less. So that's what the people that have entered that policy have been up against. There's other issues about the policy. One of the issues that I have a big problem with is the extinguishment. As soon as you enter that policy, you're expected to extinguish your Aboriginal title forever after. We're expected to extinguish the title for our kids that are not yet born. I'm born with title. Everybody in here is born with title. I don't believe that we have a right to sign away that title for our kids and our grandkids. So that's been my position all along. I guess like any First Nation community, our vision is to be, number one, to be self-sustaining, to have access to our own lands and our resources, and to have a say in what takes place on our territory. Any development we should be involved in. We should have a say in whether we want it or not, and we should always be included in all decisions that affect our territory. Well, I guess the biggest challenge is the federal government and the provincial government. Their laws and their policies really affect our ability to do what we want to do with the land and to develop what we want to develop. Third-party interests are a big problem because, like in our territory, we have a lot of Zecs, outfitters with exclusive rights. We have mining companies that have rights. We have forestry companies that have rights, for logging, and all of those impact on our ability to be able to have a say and to do what we want to do on our territory. The government of Canada, they're supposed to be our fiduciaries, and all of this. Historically, they haven't lived up to their agreements, their old agreements that they have with the Algonquin people and other people. Anytime that First Nations people were asked to dispose of their land, they were supposed to meet with the concerned First Nations. They were supposed to get their consent, and only the federal government was supposed to be able to do that. But they've never lived up to that, because today you see that they've transferred all of our lands over to the provinces. The jurisdiction for natural resources, everything, and so they have never lived up to their obligations to us, and they're still not doing it today. And in our situation, it's very difficult, because we have to deal with the federal government, the province of Quebec, and the province of Ontario. So it's a very complicated claim. And the province's role, they have to be at the table because of what happened in the past, and what the federal government did, transferring our land over to provincial jurisdiction without our consent. Because it does, our territory is in two provinces. We have rights on the Ontario side as well as on the Quebec side. And we should have the same say in Ontario as we do in Quebec. That Ottawa River was never a boundary for our people. In fact, it was the heart of our territory at one time. But now, because of the way that Canada divided up the provinces, it separated our territory, into two jurisdictions. So we have to protect our rights on the Ontario side, just the same as we do on the Quebec side, because we do have rights in both provinces. And just because it's Ontario, that doesn't mean anything as far as we're concerned. The Golden Lake claim also takes in part of Wolf Lake's Aboriginal title area between, Deux Rivières and Deep River, especially based on our historical research. Again, it's definitely Wolf Lake Aboriginal title area, and also the area between Mattawa and Deux Rivières is clearly it's Eagle Village territory. So they are negotiating with the federal and the provincial governments without discussions, with us beforehand. I think that's just not right, because once it's settled, it's very difficult after to get that change. You end up having to go to court. Is basically your only option after, even though they say our rights are going to be protected, with any agreement that is signed between Ontario, Canada, and the Golden Lake people. That's not true. Well, I just mentioned the situation with the Algonquins of Golden Lake. That's a serious overlap, just because they are currently at the negotiating table. I believe that any overlap should be dealt with between the communities themselves, without involving any outside governments, federal or provincial governments. The overlap should be dealt with based on facts, based on the research, the historical research, and also the current use and occupancy research that we have also done. And it should be agreed upon between all of the Algonquins, because we all have overlaps, with different communities, and it's normal. It's like that right across the country. But I think that we should sit down, have discussions with our neighbors, and everybody bring their facts to the table of why they claim, a certain area. We're willing to do that, because we have done our research. And the only option to get to the table now is that comprehensive claims policy. There's no other game in town. That's it. And so at the end of the day, if you enter into that policy, you're expected to give up your Aboriginal title to the territory once and for all. You have to accept loan funding. They'll lend you money, which you have to pay back at whenever your claim is settlement, and all of those other issues, where you have to give up your reserve status, you give up your tax exemption, and all of your land becomes fee simple. So that's the process that they've elected to go into. We're going to be calling on them to give us direction, and I would like them to be able to provide direction from an informed perspective, not just put directs, somewhere, without knowing what their consequences might be, because it's for keeps, it's forever after. So that's what I would like, from them, is for them to, to try to, start to understand these issues and how important they are. Not only, it's not about us today. It's for the future generations that we're talking about, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That's what we're here for. It's a long process. They shouldn't expect it to be resolved within the next 2, 5, or even 10 years. Some people have been negotiating for 30 years, and they are no closer today at resolving their claim issue than they were when they started. So I would like them just to, to get to, understand the issue, the importance of the issue, and that, there's no magic bullet when you're dealing with these things. It's very, very complicated, it's very legal, and it's very permanent once it's done, so that we cannot make mistakes.